All right, welcome back in. It's the Zach Gelb Show right here on CBS Sports Radio. We get ready to tip off the 2018 NBA postseason, and we'll do that with the 1975 Finals MVP, the Basketball Hall of Famer, and now is in his second season as the head coach of the Ball Hogs in the Big Three League, and that is Rick Barry, the Hall of Famer, joining us right now on CBS Sports Radio. Rick, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how you been?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just actually got done with our combine and the draft, and it should be an exciting season with the Big Three. Every team, I think, improved themselves, so the competition should be pretty intense this coming summer.
You talk about improvements. You guys finished last season. How do you guys get better going into year number two?
Well, we didn't finish last, I don't think, but we were right down there. But we played well. We won 4 of our last 5 games. But it's the whole new season, and we have new players. We've added 4 different players to the roster, and so I think we could be very competitive with the people that we have right now. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there and seeing what our guys can do.
But let's talk about the NBA postseason. You look at the Golden State Warriors. This was a team right before the NBA All-Star break. You had their coach and Steve Kerr say, we just got to get away from each other. Then he questioned their effort after the 20-point loss at the end of the season to the Pacers. Steph Curry, currently out right now, will not play in this first round. Still, the Golden State Warriors win 58 games, are expected to get to the NBA Finals. How do you view this bunch going into the postseason?
Well, nobody likes to see a grown man cry, but I feel very badly for what's going on. It's just not the way you want to go into the playoffs. They look like a mash unit. So many injuries that they've had. One of their I think their key player is out. It's going to be a tough battle for them. Certainly, they're playing against a team that has a great history. Pop always has been playing tough defense and playing well, and even without Kawhi Leonard, they could be a challenge for the Warriors. So it'll be interesting to see how they're able to survive this, and then of course, even if they're able to get past San Antonio, and Steph is supposed to be back in the next series. How good is he going to be? I mean, he's been out for such a long period of time. I know he's come back off our other injuries and played at a high level, but can he play at his best level for an extended period of time? You have to figure that the odds on that are probably not with him. So it doesn't look great for them to do it, especially as good as the Rockets have been playing. That's certainly the team that you'd have to pick to win it all this year, based upon the way the team's been playing going into the playoffs.
I think that's the biggest key is how good is Steph Curry when he comes back from a very tough injury, like you were saying. If they get an effective Steph versus a non-effective Steph, how would they match up with the Houston Rockets if that is the Western Conference Final?
Well, they're going to have a problem because the Rockets gave them a problem. Even in the season, they played them tough. I think they actually beat them in the first game of the season, if I'm not mistaken, when they played against each other. But no, here's the thing. If both teams were at full strength, totally healthy, and they played their best basketball, I think the Warriors would beat the Rockets. But if the Warriors are not going to be at their best, then I say the edge has to go to the Rockets. I mean, anybody, as much as I love the Warriors and want them to win, I'm just being realistic. I mean, as my wife said, honey, I love your honesty, but you're brutally honest. The brutal honesty of it is that the Warriors are in trouble.
If you look at the Rockets going into this postseason compared to previous postseasons, this has a different feel. But Mike D'Antoni in his career has not been a good postseason coach, and James Harden didn't really show up in last year's postseason. Is that all a concern with the Rockets for you when you get ready for a new postseason?
Well, there's always a concern to how well somebody's going to play in the playoffs. I mean, it's one thing to play well in the regular season. It's another thing to play well in the playoffs. That's why it'll be interesting to see what happens with Philadelphia. There are so many young players. Are they going to be able to sustain what they put on at the end of the season going into the playoffs? So that's going to be a fun thing to watch. But yeah, you bring up a very valid point. There's no question there are question marks for every team going into the playoffs. Let's see if Harden's going to play at the level that he's played at. Let's see what happens, with D'Antoni and the fact that he hasn't had a lot of success. But I think one of the big influences there, and one of the things that you have to consider with the Rockets, Chris Paul. I think he makes a huge difference to them. The experience that he has, his ability to do the things that he does, and he's been in playoff situations before. I think he can be a major factor for the Rockets' success.
Now, I know you touched on the Spurs a little bit, but when you look at the 3 teams that could be in the Warriors' way of getting to the Houston Rockets, because as an outsider, we all want to see Houston and Golden State go up against it in the Western Conference Final. If you look at some of these matchups, the Spurs in the first round or the Pelicans and the Blazers that await whoever wins that first round series in round number 2. Any of those teams have a realistic chance of taking down Golden State 4 times in a 7-game series?
Yeah, under the situation that exists for the Warriors, absolutely. I mean, the Warriors have to perform at an incredibly high level, and I just don't know whether they're going to be able to do that under the circumstances that exist right now. And as much as I'd love to see that happen for them playing well, the chances of them playing the kind of basketball they're capable of playing at that level for a consistent, during a 7-game series, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do it. I have real serious reservations about it, to be honest with you. The 2 teams you just mentioned, I mean, the Pelicans and the Blazers. The Blazers are also one of the teams that has played well and improved a great deal. They were always a lousy defensive team. They've gotten better there, but they have their backcourt is tough a backcourt as you have to go up against. So what the heck happens if you don't have a Steph Curry to match up against Lillard and some of those guys? I mean, no, there's no easy move for the Warriors here, and I'm just very concerned about it. It's hard to repeat. And injuries are such a major factor. That's usually the biggest factor. Sometimes a team's not playing particularly well. They can maybe shake that off and they'll lose a game or 2 that they shouldn't have lost because of it, but they get their act together. But if you're not healthy and everybody's not playing at a high level and can't perform at the level they're capable of playing because of injuries that they've suffered, that's a whole new factor that you have to put into the equation. And it's not looking good for the Warriors when you factor that in.
I'll tell you, it's more intriguing because the last few years we just all expected it's going to be the Warriors and the Cavaliers in the final. It has a little bit of a different feel this year. I'll still believe it when I see it that we don't see that matchup, but this year's postseason has a little bit of a different feel to it, Rick.
Well, there's no question. Then you had Boston, who was looking good, and then they lose Kyrie, so now that's a major problem for them. The interesting thing is seeing what Philadelphia's doing, as I mentioned earlier, as to what they're going to do, how they can sustain that going into the playoffs and play at that level. Toronto, Washington should be a very intriguing series as well to see what happens there. So there's no given. I would say if you had to pick something, that more than likely you'd have to think that Cleveland may have the best chance of coming out of the East as opposed to the Warriors coming out of the West.
I agree with you because I don't love this Raptors team, and still in a 7-game series, talking to Rick Barry right now, the Hall of Famer on CBS Sports Radio, I just don't see the way LeBron's playing right now, even though that team is vulnerable, how you stop LeBron James 4 times in a 7-game series in the East.
Yeah, well, it can't all be LeBron James. That's the problem they ran into before. It was too much of LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. I mean, you have to play as a team, and you have to pass the ball, move the ball. You can't have one player dominating it. That's what they did when the Warriors won their first championship a few years ago. It was the LeBron show. I was writing for the Examiner then, and I charted all the games. Oh, my God, I think it was almost like 50 different times they came down the floor. It was either LeBron taking a shot or one pass and a shot. You can't win playing that kind of basketball. You got to have more people involved. But certainly the Cavaliers, I think, are the team to pick coming out of the East. But I don't know what's – and the Rockets would be the team you have to come out of the West right now. I mean, realistically, that you have to go with them because they've played great basketball.
You being one of the great NBA players, if you look at what LeBron James is doing right now, and he just doesn't slow down, 27.5 points per game this year, also averaging 8.6 and 9.1. Just for you, what is it like to look at a LeBron James who's been this dominant for so long?
I have just great respect and admiration for his consistency and the fact that when he puts his uniform on, he's going out there and he's serious about what he's doing. He takes great pride in the fact that he's going to give his best effort. I thank God that, he has some flaws in his game because otherwise he'd be so good they'd have to outlaw him. He's scary. I mean, I'm serious about that. I mean, he has flaws in his game. I talked about his shooting years ago and corrected that, not to the point where he needs to be because he's never been an 80% free throw shooter. But my God, if he didn't have some of those flaws, as good as he is in some of the other areas, it would be a frightening thing to have to go ahead against him. You see the other game when they lost that game. Did you see what he did when they came back from that big deficit
against the Sixers? Yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, he was like a man possessed.
He missed one free throw and it cost his team, but he was insane down the stretch.
But that's what I'm talking about. See, he's never been a great free throw shooter, and he missed a critical free throw, and that's his Achilles heel. Anyway, I think he's an amazing player. He's the best 3 to ever play the game. I keep hearing people he's the greatest basketball player. No, he's the greatest 3. You can't say a guy's the greatest player when you have to play a position that other skills are required to play the other positions. But certainly at the 3 position, there's nobody that can hold a candle to him. He's the best and probably he's the best of all time.
I know you mentioned the Sixers, and I'm curious to see how a young team like that hasn't been in this stage for a long time does play in the postseason. But they're red hot right now, winning 16 in a row, and they're doing it without Joel Embiid, who will not play in Game 1, and we'll see if he gets in to this Miami Heat series. But just to see how this has unfolded with the process over the last few years, now they have two very good players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and you got a coach in Brett Brown, which, a league that doesn't have a lot of patience. He was able to see this thing through, and he's been a good coach for this team this year. Just give me a little bit on the Sixers as they get ready to enter the postseason.
Well, if they want to continue to go on and have a chance to do something special, they got to get their big guy back. I mean, he's a pretty special player, no question. And I really like Simmons. I got to see Simmons. My son Canyon played against him when Canyon was at the College of Charleston, and got to play against him there. And when I saw him play, I said, "Wow, this kid's going to be one heck of a pro basketball player." And if he ever learns to develop an outside shot,
no question.
Watch out. I mean, because he's pretty spectacular. His size, his mobility, the ball handling, the court vision, the feel for the game. And he just needs to work on learning how to, shoot the ball a little bit better, certainly from mid-range and from three-point range. But, boy, he's got a lot of time to still be able to do that. And he's going to be, I think, a great player in this league for a long period of time.
Tanking doesn't always work. In the case of the Sixers, it appears that it is working right now after many long years of losing. Do you think the NBA has a tanking problem? And if so, how would you try to fix this if you were the commissioner of the NBA?
Well, first of all, how can you get players to tank? I don't understand why people come up with this. Do you think players actually go out on court?
It's not the players, but the organizations don't give them enough assets to win.
We talked about they don't give them enough. They can't control a player when he's on the court. And here's the thing. I have no problem with they have to just change the draft rules is what they need to do. It makes sense for a team to bring guys up from the D-League team to go ahead and utilize other people. If you know you're out of the playoffs, you should be able to play your other people to get an idea of what they can do as an evaluation process for yourself. And that should be part of what the game should be. It's a very simple thing. What you do is you reward the teams that just missed the playoffs, and they get the best opportunity to get the best draft pick. If you did that, then teams would compete more. They would want to try to do it so that they had a better chance to get a better player.
But let me just, on the other end of that argument, if you didn't want to change the lottery system, and I know the league just adapted it a little bit, but what happens if you have a situation like the Cavaliers once LeBron left, or the Nets after they made a really bad trade? Teams that just aren't good enough. They weren't tanking, but what other way would a team like the Nets or the Cavaliers at that time try to get better if it wasn't through the draft?
Because, well, what they need to do is to find out, to evaluate players better and make better choices. Some of the choices that they make when they evaluate players are pretty pathetic. Just look at the track record of so many teams. Learn how to evaluate the personnel better and make better choices, because that's what it comes down to. It's who do you draft? Who do you get in free agency? Who do you trade for? You got to get better selections with your players. That's how you get to be better. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the first pick. There's been a lot of first picks who haven't been all that great. I mean, so if you're in the lottery and you're going to be in the lottery, I mean, there's enough good players out there. Make a good choice. My God, some of the choices that these teams make, you wonder what the hell were they watching all season long.
I'll tell you, one of those teams have been the New York Knicks for, it seems like well over a decade now. I know the Knicks have another coaching vacancy. I know there's rumors of Jay Wright. I don't see Jay taking that job with the Knicks. This is a Knicks job that I don't really see the appeal. I understand it's New York. I understand it's Madison Square Garden, but this has been an organization that's been a laughingstock for a long time now.
Yeah, well, as I said, they need to make better choices as far as evaluating the players and coming up with good selections and trying to bring some better personnel there. Then you hope that you get a coach that can not screw things up if you do get the right personnel. But that's what it comes down to. In all team sports, the major sports, it comes down to those three things that I just mentioned previously. And so many teams do a poor job of that. If you don't have the right talent, I don't care who's coaching the team. Unless it's God comes down and pulls a miracle, you're not going to win.
Wrapping up with Rick Barry right now, the Hall of Famer on CBS Sports Radio. You can follow him on Twitter at Rick24Barry. Let me just get your opinion.
No, that's not Twitter. That's Twitter, yeah. But I tell everybody real quickly, go to Rick24.com. A special gift for you. Just check it out. And it's, my gift to you. And it's for real. It's a nice present and an opportunity for you to save a few bucks. So just tell people to go to Rick24.com. So go ahead with your honest question.
You got it. Before I let you run, Russell Westbrook, last year he averaged a triple-double. Everyone was going nuts over it. He won the MVP. This year He averages a triple-double again, and it seems like nobody cares. Why is that as someone that's been around the game for such a long time?
Well, I don't think it's like nobody cares. I mean, you've got Harden playing exceptionally well and you have LeBron playing exceptionally well, but also I think enough has come out to realize that there's a big difference between the triple-doubles that he's getting. And take nothing away from the fact that what he accomplished is remarkable for a guard to do that. But the big difference is that when Oscar Robertson did it, and he almost did it 3 different times, came very close, Oscar Robertson wasn't trying to get triple-doubles. There's a big difference. Westbrook goes out to play, and he's trying to get triple-doubles. It's something that everybody's talking about. It's something that's a goal. It's something that they're shooting for. And sometimes it almost gets embarrassing the way sometimes he gets some extra rebounds or some other things. And the other thing is that you never can compare what he did, even last season, which was remarkable, to what Oscar did. Because the last time I checked, Westbrook didn't have to drive in and play against 8 times or 9 times against Bill Russell, 8 or 9 times against Will Chamberlain, 8 or 9 times against Nate Thurman, 8 or 9 times against Walt Bellamy. I mean, there's no centers in the league. There's nobody hardly in there that's contesting stuff. I can assure you that if he were to go to the basket like he does against Russell, against Chamberlain, Thurman, and those guys, he never would have gotten some of the dunks and some of the plays that he had.
Well, Rick, always appreciate your honesty. Always appreciate your insight. I think, and I tell you this all the time you come on, I think you're one of the more entertaining basketball guests that we get to talk to. So safe travels. We appreciate it. Let's do it again real soon, Rick.
Yeah. Well, the Knicks ought to go ahead and hire me to go and find their talent. Bye.
Well, you know what? If you do well in this Big 3 league, maybe Jimmy Dolan will be calling your name soon.
All right. Take care. God bless you and the listeners. See you.